This is Len Knudsen, the RVI Guy. I've been helping companies go paperless and automate their workflows with real vision imaging software since 1995. I'd like to welcome you to the Paperless Workplace podcast, where our topics are going to bridge the gap between technology and expectations. And as always, I'm going to be broadcasting from my beautiful corner office with the view, sponsored by Zoom Virtual Backgrounds. In today's episode, I'm going to cover what you need to go paperless. You know, you really don't buy a paperless workplace, you design it. And my wife is a big fan of HGTV. She watches all the fixer-upper shows. And the problem with that is sometimes she confuses me with those workers that can actually do stuff, but I really don't make or fix much of anything. I'm kind of more of a get-a-guy guy. Besides talent, I often lack the right tools. You know, I've got a toolbox with all the basics. I've got hammers, screwdrivers, wrenches, pliers, saws. I've got a few power tools. I can replace the toilet tank parts. I can hang a curtain rod, but just don't ask me to remodel the kitchen. So Len, what in the world's this got to do with a paperless workplace? Well, the tools you need to go paperless is really going to be based on the scope of your project. At a most basic level, you're going to need a software solution. You're going to need a little hardware, and you're going to need some expertise to build what it is you've designed. But maybe your project is just a simple electronic file cabinet where you want to archive documents for later retrieval. But maybe your project is a bit more sophisticated and you're going to need advanced capabilities, things like integration, automation, signatures, approvals, mobile access, things like that. The question to ask is, what's in your toolbox? You know, when you go visit a Lowe's or Home Depot, you're immediately struck by the thousands of tools that they stock. But it's really not that complicated if you think about it. Tools really fall into one of the following classifications. You know, they either measure, hold, cut, drill, or drive things. And I think that same analogy can be carried over to paperless software solutions. You know, while there's so many product features for you to consider, you really can group them into one of these four must-have categories. So the first thing is your paperless solution needs to be able to capture your documents. And this really involves two steps. They need to get digitized, and then they are indexed, which are the locators we're going to use to find specific documents. So next, now that your documents are captured, they need to be put someplace. So you need a storage kind of strategy for your long-term preservation, and then you also need to secure your documents to enforce maximum protection. Another key area for paperless solutions is that they really give you the opportunity to significantly improve your management capabilities. You've got automated workflows, you've got detailed audits, you've got dashboards that can be customized that all tell you what's happening with your documents at any point in time in your system. So really, now that your documents have been captured, they've been stored and secured, and they've been managed, they're now available for retrieval by authorized users from the office, over the web, or even with a mobile device. So these are the four primary functions to consider when you're planning your paperless workplace. And what we'll do now is we'll take a deeper dive into each of these four categories. Okay, when it comes to capture, you've got to remember that documents are not going to be just limited to paper. Don't forget about all your electronic records, things that are already in digital format. So when it comes to paper documents, you're going to need some kind of a hardware device to digitize them. And there are dozens of scanner manufacturers that have a wide variety of options for you to look at. Desktop scanners attached to a PC workstation, equipped with some cleanup software. That's probably the most common device you're going to see for production scanning. But most companies these days have a multifunction device, or MFDs, and these are those general purpose office copier scanners, printers, and fax machines. And depending on how you use those, they can also double up for your capture workload. Then you've got network scanners, which are kind of like everything built into one. You also have those low-end Twain scanners that you could pick up at the office stores. They occupy a much smaller footprint, which really make them a perfect choice for either distributed or casual type capture. Of course, mobile devices, they can also handle some occasional document scanning as well. And then you have a whole range of specialty devices, things like signature pads if you're going to do signature capture, or even biometric scanners if you're going to get into fingerprint identification. So the point here is you're going to need some kind of a hardware device when it comes to digitizing your paper. And today's scanners, the standard products are all kind of equipped for high resolution scanning. They're all color capable. And they all pretty much do duplexing, which is in one pass, I can capture the front and back of the document. Things that are optional things that you look for are maybe the size of an auto doc feeder, maybe whether it's got a flatbed attachment, the ability to handle larger size documents, smaller size documents, and even maybe some thicker documents, maybe those embossed ID cards that you want to capture. Having said all of that, the two most important specifications to evaluate, I think, would be the rated speed of the scanner, or really the throughput, which they typically measure in pages per minute. And the other key specification is the duty cycle, which is really the maximum recommended number of pages you should scan with this device on a daily basis. So that's your paper documents, but some documents are already born digital, and these can be directly imported. So this would include things like your emails, word processing spreadsheets, photos, audio-visual data, so much more. These are already in digitized format, so it's going to be quite inefficient to think that you would print them out and then maybe even recapture it by a scanner later in the process. Yet we see some companies that do this exact thing. The third type of documents you ought to plan for is your print output. That could be, examples here would be things, your forms, your statements, your invoices, purchase orders, bill of ladings, listings, reports, all of the other type output that you print out on a daily basis. These days, most applications can feed us a PDF output stream, which can kind of simplify the capture process if that's something you want to archive as well. So the message here is to make sure that the capture system that you select can handle all three of these document types. Because if you only focus on the paper documents and you ignore the non-paper formats, it's kind of like having one foot on the boat and the other foot on the dock, because eventually you're going to get wet. When it comes to capture, the elephant in the room has always been the indexing process. Now, indexes are the values that can be used to search for and locate specific documents. So here we have an example that we're looking at an invoice, and you might want to be able to retrieve that by vendor name, vendor number, order number, date, amount, document type. With 10 index values, the good news is you've got 10 different ways to find individual documents. However, the bad news is the labor that was required to enter those keystrokes. The name of the game is to minimize the data entry workload through automated approaches. One way to do that is through an integrated approach where data can be passed either directly from an application screen or maybe even using a program call to the database to bring back values to populate in the index fields. But then there are several recognition techniques that can also eliminate keystrokes. The immediate one you think of is barcodes, where relevant data can be stored and read with the properly configured scanner with its software. You also have forms recognition. This is the ability at scan time to identify the document type based on either its line geometry or other distinguishing characteristics, which then can be useful to figure out what indexes you need to retrieve. When it comes to recognition, there are several formats here. You tend to think of OCR as the most common, which is optical character recognition. Now, this requires some kind of a software engine that can extract data directly from a document, and there are various types that are involved here. So depending on the software, maybe you're trying to identify specific fields, which is known as zonal recognition. Maybe you want to have a fully searchable version of the document that's called full text recognition. And they even have OCR engines that can interpret handprint or cursive writing. Although sometimes with my writing, I can't even read it, so I don't know how these software engines are going to interpret it. But the message here is, don't assume that your paperless system is going to be automatically equipped with capture software. Many vendors actually will leave it up to the customer to research and select their own capture product of their preference. There are a handful of really good ones out there too, some really good secondary capture products. They can be purchased separately. And maybe to further muddy up the picture a little bit, most of the scanner manufacturers now even bundle proprietary capture solutions with their hardware. And as a public service announcement to you, the term secondary product, that loosely translates to bring your wallet. Once captured, the next decisions you're going to need to make are where you're going to store your digital documents, who can access them, and how long you're going to keep them. Instead of file cabinets, your digital documents are going to be stored on a hardware device. What's interesting is that will also give you some new backup options, which gives you further protection when it comes to storing your digital documents. At some point in time, numbers are going to matter, and you're going to need to do a little math to estimate what you're actually going to need. But really, don't count on any reliable data when it comes to making these estimates. No, I think it's going to be more likely that you're going to have to do a little rough justice. So kind of here's what I mean. Let's say you're scanning 1,000 pages a day. And let's just say, to keep it easy, 250 work days a year. That's 250,000 documents per year. If we used 50K as a conservative estimate as the capacity size to scan a single page, then 1 gig would approximately equate to 20,000 pages. Therefore, 12.5 gigs would be your annual requirement for storage based on a daily volume of 1,000 pages. That's one way to kind of maybe do some capacity planning. Another shortcut when you actually lack data would be to count up how many file cabinet drawers are used for on-site documents, along with how many boxes of documents are sent off-site for archival. And the reason I say that is, generally speaking, the users have a very good idea of how many months worth of documents are available in their on-site file cabinets. And they also have a pretty good feel for how many months, years, or whatever they can go back with their archive documents, wherever they keep them off-site or in another location. So that's the storage side of it. The next thing you look at is security, and you need to be able to have controls that will enable you to restrict who can access what documents, and furthermore, what permissions they have granted once they actually retrieve the document. You know, for example, say you open up your AP system to your outside vendors, you might want to authorize them to retrieve documents that are specific to just their company. You could even limit what document types you give them access to, and you may want to put a restriction on that they can only view or print documents. That's the kind of stuff you can do with security controls. Another task that paperless solutions do quite well is they monitor and report on what's going on with your documents. There's detailed audits that will track what specific user actions are taking place, viewing, printing, making index updates, who did it, where it took place, when it took place, what device they were at. That's also an important part of your paperless solution as well. And then there's the purge process, how to handle expired records. You know, your documents are all going to have different life cycles, and they can vary all over the place from months to years to even sometimes forever. And I think here too, you'll find that some of these are real requirements and some of them are really perceived timetables. But either way, retention controls will give you the ability to establish rules so that you can automate this process and you can define how you want expired records to be handled. You want to hold on to them, you want to automatically get rid of them, you want to have them sent to a queue to be reviewed. You can automate that process. So that's another key feature that you can have. Okay, so the next functional area that we talk about for your paperless solutions has to do with managing your documents better. Going paperless is going to open up some entire new possibilities for you really to think about as you manage your documents. The immediate thing you think of is workflow, and that's the ability to automate your business processes for greater efficiency. You can look at this as eliminating any unnecessary steps, enforcing procedures, and maybe just understanding that you've got better information that can provide very good insights into what's going on in your operation. Workflows, they can be simple. You can have just a couple of steps, a few basic routing rules set up, or they can be more sophisticated with lots of detailed steps, conditional-based routing, things like that. In the more advanced scenarios, frequently you're even blurring the lines between capture, workflow, and integration and tying all three of those together to create the maximum automation for your business processes. That being said, I think workflow really comes down to three components that you ought to be looking for in your paperless workplace. And the first one is you need the ability to move or distribute work. This is how the work is going to get routed, what rules are going to be followed. Typically, the users can exchange work items through work baskets. These can be shared. They can even be monitored for inbound work. So for example, we're sharing off of a work queue and I want to set up some auto polling or some pop-a queue type techniques to retrieve work. So moving work is an important element. An approval system is something that you ought to make sure the paperless software is equipped with. That's how users can advance work or redirect items on the next step of the process. There are priorities, reason codes, callback reminders, overdue notifications, and signature stamping. Those are just a few of the many approval type features you'll see. So you need to move work, you need to be able to approve it. The third element of a workflow solution should include the ability to give you audits and charts, all for the work in progress item. These are things like the work basket counts, the age distribution that's out there, or even tracking what specific actions were taken from our workflow, who approved what with what reason codes, those kinds of stuff. That's all part of auditing and counts. As companies these days have become more comfortable working with digital documents, invariably they've upped the game for wanting more data and more intelligence about what's happening. So dashboards have become quite popular with our customers, where we can combine multiple reports or graphs in a single window. So that gives you a good picture as to what's taking place across the operation, much like driving your car with all the gauges and kind of keep an eye on what's happening under the hood. RPA, that's a trending technology. That stands for robotic process automation. And it's really combines OCR extraction with the use of artificial intelligence to either automate tasks or to provide detailed insights as to what's happening within your work process. So these are all things that you should expect to see in workflow and managing your documents better when it comes to a paperless solution. That takes us then to the fourth step of the process. Your documents are captured, they're stored and secured, they're managed, and now they're available for instant retrieval by authorized users from the office, over the web, or even from a mobile device. So the first thing you want to understand is the user interface, which is how the end users are going to interact with the system and to access the documents that they're trying to retrieve. And there really are four general approaches of how you might integrate a paperless solution with your existing business environment. The first one we kind of mentioned earlier, it's the simplest one. It's a standalone inquiry approach. Some call this an electronic file cabinet. Documents are going to then be scanned, indexed. They're going to be stored for retrieval. We're not calling it from applications, so there's no integration that way. Typically, workflow is not included in these implementations. They're strictly like a user goes to a file cabinet today for a document, they would go to an electronic file cabinet to retrieve a document. With an interfaced approach, which is the vast majority of how we implement systems, you're calling the paperless software system directly from either a business application, either using program calls, or a screen scrape approach. In this manner, a user can really launch directly to relevant documents directly from a screen that they're working on. Perhaps I want to bring back all the documents I have on file for vendor 3 when I'm working on doing some research having to do with vendor 3. Or maybe you're retrieving data from a database that can be used to populate index values. So that would be an interfaced or an integrated approach. Assuming the paperless system is web-enabled, which you probably need to ask, web access is yet another way that we can provide document retrievals to your remote users. And of course, don't forget to understand what's available in the way of mobile apps, which may or may not be part of your initial scope, but no doubt mobile applications are something you're going to look for in your paperless solution at some point in time. So these are the four basic ingredients that you should be seeking for any paperless workflow solution you design. But everybody's got a different story when it comes to how documents are handled, and kind of figuring out what you need, it might seem more like a puzzle to you. And when you first start a puzzle, you open a box, you dump the pieces on the table, and it really just looks overwhelming. And then all of a sudden, you pull the picture out. The picture on the box is helping you visualize what it is you're trying to build. You separate the straight edges out. You start to build the border, move the colors, group them together. Little by little, the project is coming together for you. And you know what? Sometimes some puzzles are just easier than others. You know that. So when it comes to what you need to go paperless, you're going to need a little hardware, you're going to need a paperless software solution, and you're going to need some professional services to hold these pieces together for you. As a recap, we mentioned the hardware requirements. They're not that extensive, but you are going to need some equipment. You're going to need the scanners if you're planning to capture paper documents, and you're going to need to think about the storage device where you're going to archive your digital documents. What you actually select and what you need is going to be based on the number of documents that you're processing. And that's going to take a little capacity planning on your part, or at a minimum, some educated guesses. So that's the hardware side of it. The software conversation tends to be a little more complex, as your paperless workplace solution really needs to address all four of the must-have functions you see here. You know, if you're lucky, you might find a product that packages all these capabilities together in one base software product. It so happens that our Real Vision imaging solution was designed this way. The next best situation when you're selecting a solution is they might be offered as optional modules for a separate charge. And that's not uncommon at all in an industry that's dominated by component-based solutions. The good news to that is if you don't need it, you don't pay for it. But the bad news to it is every time you want to do something, you got to basically bring your wallet. The third thing is that sometimes your requirements are going to call for a more advanced secondary niche type product. And a few examples I can think of is maybe your capture requirements are so specific and detailed. Maybe you're going to need an OCR engine. Maybe you need a specialized forms product, workflow software, or even specialty solutions that can help you with signature capture, biometrics, or even grabbing detailed analytics and insights as to what's taking place. So you've got hardware, you've got software you're going to need. The final leg of the three-legged stool is the professional services that's going to hold all of this together for you in your paperless workplace. Remember my tools analogy I used up front when I said I'm kind of more of a get-a-guy guy? Well, with paperless systems, some assembly is required, and I don't know, this is really no time for do-it-yourself dentistry. Quick story I want to share about my grandpa Tringali. He was a skilled iron worker, and he migrated to the US from Sicily. He operated his own ironworks business in downtown Manhattan. This was during the Great Depression years, and he told me a story once about a quote that he gave a customer who complained vehemently about the price for something that was only going to take my grandfather maybe 2 or 3 hours to complete. So my grandfather told him, "But you're not paying for my time, you're paying for my knowledge." He got that job. But did I mention that he was Sicilian? I don't know if that had anything to do with it. Going paperless is an opportunity that lets you totally transform your workplace. But once again, you don't buy a paperless workplace, you design it. And expertise is available at every step along the way from your paperless journey, from the initial requirements definition right through installation, training, and support. Typically, once you've finalized the project details, a scope of work is documented, which really provides the tasks that are going to be delivered, the resources that are going to be required, and ultimately what you care about is what are these services going to cost. But really, you don't need to be a product expert. You kind of just need to know where to find one. You know, most vendors can provide you with the expertise you're going to need to build your paperless workplace and to make sure everything works as you designed it. So let's wrap up this podcast with an important word from our sponsor. Real Vision Software owns, designs, develops, supports, and installs the Real Vision imaging or RVI solution. RVI is the only product that we make, and it was really designed with simplicity and value in mind. And there are 3 takeaways that I'd like to share with you about our RVI solution. The first is that RVI is a complete solution. It's comprehensive. It gives you nearly all the capabilities you're going to need to go paperless. And it's available either as an on-premise solution for either your IBM i or your Windows servers, or even as a cloud solution. Our user interface is very simple. It's browser-based. There's no code to download, so it's very intuitive for the users to pick up. We do provide a capture system with our base product at no additional charge. Handles your scans, your imports, and your print and output. Workflow is included within our base product at no additional charge. We do provide you with the controls for security so you can determine who gets what, as well as retention, so you can automate your purge process. It was built for integration. We've got program calls, and we provide a screen scrape utility to help you interface it with both your applications and or your database. And we provide mobile apps for Apple and Android devices. They're at the respective Play stores at no additional charge. So RVI is a very complete solution. Secondly, our pricing is simple and it is cost effective. You pay one price, you pay one time, and you get all product features for unlimited users. There are no add-on modules. There are no user-based fees. There are no per-item usage charges that increase the more you use the product. Our annual support is only 15%, and it includes future RVI releases. And we have several entry-level options if you have 10 concurrent users or less. So you can start out low, and then you can upgrade at a later time. So we have a complete solution. We've got a great pricing model for you. And I would say the last thing that I'd like you to remember is that we provide you with the expertise you need. Our installers will customize the software to your specific requirements. We don't charge when we involve them on the front end to do your requirements discovery, because actually that helps us clarify the project scope as well. And we know that you know your business and we know our software. So that makes a great team, because if you can tell us what we need, we can build it for you. We get most of our projects that we deal with, we have up and running in 1, maybe 2 weeks. And during COVID times, all of these services are performed remotely. So basically, we're a complete solution with great pricing, and we give you the expertise to help you get up and running in a very quick time period. Real Vision software has 30 years of document capture, workflow, and integration experience. And you know what? We've probably heard your story before. From day one, our goal has been to always provide you with the best product, the best value, and the best support you're going to find in this industry. And over the years, the bar has certainly been raised, but RVI has kept pace nicely with the hundreds of innovative software enhancements we've passed on to our customers. We have thousands of customers from nearly every industry you can imagine that trust RVI to manage millions of documents every single day. So relax. We got this. This is Len Knudsen, the RVI Guy, and I am all in on your paperwork challenges, whether they're big or small. If you want to connect with me, just visit our website at the link you see here. Click the schedule a demo button, send me a message. I'll be happy to connect with you. I greatly appreciate your interest in our podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, give us a like, post a comment, or share it.